Hi guys, it's Caroline. Welcome back to Coral Talks. It's been a hot minute. Did you guys miss me? I missed myself too. Well, let's get started. It is officially Christmas, so that means we are going to be in full swing with everything Christmas because it's already November 12th. The joke is going to be Christmas themed. A lot of things are going to be Christmas and cold themed. I know for half of the world it's summer, but for me it's Christmas, so we're going to do Christmas. Joke of the day. What do Santa's helpers learn in school? Na 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 na. They learn the alphabet. It's a funny one. Okay, gratefulness spotlight. This week I am grateful for forks. I realized how important forks are for me because every single time I make something for myself and I forget a fork, and the things that I make, especially in like Chinese food, it is so hard to eat without a fork or chopsticks. So that's why I'm grateful for forks. Also, I am so grateful for sleep. Nowadays, I feel like I don't know what sleep is anymore. Every day I wake up and I'm like, oh, I want to go back to bed. I miss the days when I was like 3 years old and all I did was sleep. Or I'm scared to get into bed any day because if I get into bed, I don't want to get up. And it's not good. Okay, and finally, I am grateful for being able to see color because boy, was that sunset today, or every sunset. Like the colors are just out of this world. And without color, I wouldn't be able to paint, which is one of my hobbies. Speaking of paint, I have something fun. Did you know that if you paint with acrylics, the water that you wash your brush in is actually filled with a lot of microplastics because acrylic paint is a type of plastic. So are acrylics. So if you pour that paint water that you just washed your paintbrushes in and down the drain in the sink, you're actually pouring down a lot of microplastics and it's going to flow to the ocean. An alternate way that you can avoid dumping a bunch of microplastics down the drain is that when you're done with that wastewater from washing your paintbrushes, you could use a rag or you could use a paper towel and just soak the water up. Once you soak it up, go hang it dry or leave it to air dry. And if you do paper towels, you can reuse that for the same purpose. So are the rags. You could just reuse them, soak it up in a towel so that the microplastics stay in the towel and the rag that you used instead of flowing out to the ocean. Now, there's a misconception that I have noticed. People who live in California or anything by the coast, I think we're more aware of what's going on, uh, either like conservation wise for the ocean. Like, we're like, oh, okay, well, we have to make sure that we don't use too much plastics, or I feel like all the coast states, at least for in the US, they're the ones who are like so passionate about using sustainable products, like reusable paper towels, reusable utensils, and stuff like that. And I think people who are more disconnected with water, like the middle states, I don't know what is a middle state, North, South Dakota, or Tennessee, like those states are less aware of the ocean, and it makes sense because they don't see it. You don't see it, you don't think about it. And so when they don't think about what their actions can do, because even if they live in the middle of the country, there's still like aquifers, there's still watersheds that flow all throughout into rivers, into lakes, and the water in the rivers and lakes eventually flow out to the ocean. So what everybody does actually makes an impact, and I feel like people who live in the middle of our country just isn't that aware, or honestly just doesn't care that much, which is not great. Always care about it and try to be as sustainable as possible with compost, recycling, and using less plastics. That's just like a broad statement there. Okay, moving on to the featured species. This week it's going to be a shark. On social media, on Instagram, every single time I'm scrolling on Instagram Reels, sharks are always so misrepresented. Whenever you think of sharks, you think of the movie Jaws, or you think of a shark bite. You think of it being scary, and you think of having to fight a shark for your life. Um, which is understandable. Things do happen, but not every shark is like that. There's so many species of sharks. Not every shark is the great white shark, and even the great white shark shouldn't be that misunderstood. But that's a topic for another day. Today, we're going to talk about epaulet sharks. They are tiny, tiny sharks. They're slithery, snake-like sharks, only about a meter or 4 feet long. They live in shallow and tropical waters, like the ones in Australia and the surrounding waters over there. Fun fact is that they can crawl. They use their pelvic fins to crawl on the shallow sand. They can even crawl in dry land. So, because they live near tides, if they're trying to find food like shellfish or worms, sometimes they have to go out of the water, especially when there's low tide. So they can survive without oxygen for up to 2 hours and crawl on their fins for about 30 meters or 120 feet, which is amazing because rarely do you hear about a fish essentially with gills being able to live out of water and crawl with their fins. In order to live without oxygen, they shut down their brain functions and they go from there. Now that we're done with the featured species, I just want to point something out about sharks on social media. Continuing what I was talking about earlier, every single time I see something on social media of people interacting with sharks, it's so dramatic. Even if it's conservationists or marine biologists who are trying to educate you about sharks and how they're not as deadly as they are stereotyped, people cross boundaries. It's not like a good interaction with sharks is not like touching them or not petting them or not like fighting them away and being a few inches away from them. Say you're scuba diving or say snorkeling or swimming. A good interaction with sharks could be seeing them a few feet away, below, seeing them around you. A good interaction is not touching sharks, having sharks come up to you and circle around you, or having to fight off sharks. Those are in my opinion, they're so dramatic, and I feel like influencers or people who are posting videos on social media or talking about sharks, they often do it on purpose. They see a shark over there, and instead of giving them that boundary, they push and they get close to it and interact with it by touching and agitating them, which I don't think is very right because still they are wild animals, and if you break that boundary, just like with people, if you break that boundary, you don't know what the other person is going to do to you, and that is what causes these misunderstanding stereotypes about how scary and violent they are. Also, can we talk about responsible choices, especially since the holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving, and if you're a swimmer, if you're just wanting to spend some time at the beach, or if you scuba dive like me, first of all, let's talk about scuba diving. If you scuba dive, can we all be responsible? Can we make an effort to practice our buoyancy and let's streamline. Keep all of our equipment to ourselves, as close to yourself as possible. Your extra regulator, your air gauge, and whatever you have on your BCD, we keep it to ourselves and avoid any dangling things that might brush against coral or kelp or hit any animals, even. Depending on where you're scuba diving. Also, if you are diving with somebody else, a shop, make sure that we are picking ethical dive guides. They actually know what they're doing. They're experienced in the territory, in how to keep the animals in that area safe, and how to teach you proper dive techniques, because I've seen so many times there's just a group of divers who are vertical in the water, and sometimes I like laugh because I'm just, that is not like, I wonder what that entire group is doing. So yeah, make sure that you are doing your research and knowing who you are giving your money to and trusting in your safety and in protecting the environment, because after all, everything in nature is shared. You are being in the nature's environment, so you have to respect their space. Now, if you are just a swimmer, if you just want to go to a beach, just hang out at a beach, let's also be responsible. Make sure that we are not leaving trash all over. There are so many times where there's just water bottle caps, or there's a lot of litter, I don't know, snack wrappers, or just leftover sand toys, or broken sand toys too. Like, those are chunks of plastic. Let's make sure that we throw away our trash and that we are also using responsible sunscreen. If you did not know, there are certain types of sunscreens that have ingredients in them which can affect the pH regulation and release chemicals that are not good for animals and for coral. So sunscreen's important, and we have to be protected from the sun, and there are a lot of reef safe sunscreens. So let's make sure that when you're buying your sunscreen and you're putting on that sunscreen, make sure that it is reef safe, so that you are protecting and keeping in mind the animals and the environment that you are having fun in. And another thing about sharks, I am very in the mood of sharks today. Like, I originally just wanted to do a featured species on that one shark, but I'm drinking thing after thing about sharks, so I'm gonna talk about them. Another thing about sharks, there's always that misconception of, even I said it earlier, and of, if a shark is coming towards you and you feel in danger, either you have to fight it or you have to swim away. But if you didn't know, sharks are very sensitive to like motion and splashes. So first of all, you may have seen in like movies or documentaries, but if you are near a shark and you splash, like, that's gonna catch their attention. And that's okay if they're just curious. So if they swim towards you, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna get bit, like you're gonna die. Um, if they're curious, they'll usually circle around you and check you out and see, oh, is this food? Or, oh, what is this? But if they get too close to you, charging at you head on, you don't swim away. That is just not right, because you are not going to beat a shark if they do swim at you. And please don't fight it. Don't try to stab it, because that is not right. Don't try to hold it. I don't know what you would do, but the proper way to deal with sharks that are coming to you head on is to just hold out your hand, palm out, like you're high fiving somebody. When they come close enough to you, hold out your hand and with your palm, just touch their nose area and gently push them to the sides and tell them to swim away. That's just going to direct them to swim away, and that you are not something to be curious about or to continue being curious about. That usually works. I know a lot of professional dive guides who do shark guided dives. That's what they do when there is a shark encounter and it gets a little bit too personally close. Okay, now let's get into the bulk of today. Since I mentioned it was Christmas, we are going to be talking about icy cold stuff. I've been seeing a lot of sad news, which also brings me to why there isn't any positive ocean news today. I usually do a positive ocean news, but I didn't really find any, so that's not going to happen. But I thought about talking about glaciers and ice sheets, especially since we've been seeing a lot of news that they're melting. So, what exactly are glaciers and what are ice sheets? When we think about frozen landscapes, maybe you think of the movie Frozen, Elsa making with her ice powers, ice mountains. Or you might just think of it as endless white snow or a pile of snow that becomes ice and that stay there forever. But there are actually quite a lot of differences between these ices. It's not just the same thing, it's not just ice buildup. There's actually a unique process that goes to these, and each thing is different. A glacier is different from an ice sheet. So, a glacier is a slow moving river of ice that forms when continuous snow piles up over the years. It could be thousands of years, hundreds of years, and when this snow piles up, it becomes into solid sand. Fun fact, this is actually a mineral. The geological survey people classify this buildup of ice snow as a mineral. So that's pretty cool. The solid ice that is formed carves itself with the wind, the formation, direction of the wind, and form mountains as they flow across the oceans. Yes, fun fact, you heard me, they flow across the ocean. They're not drastically, they don't go in a round trip around the earth, but they flow. They are floating pieces of ice that are look like mountains, and they can move. As they move, they form, and they change constantly. They're not the same, and they're prone to melting. They're prone to being built higher. Some places that you can find glaciers are like Alaska, the Himalayas. They are beautiful. Okay, so now let's talk about ice sheets. So ice sheets are basically glaciers on steroids. It is snow, but it's like a blanket of snow. It is so big. It covers almost entire continents or countries. It can cover the mass of Costa Rica, more than about 50,000 kilometers of ice, of frozen water is what is an ice sheet. So, unfortunately, only two ice sheets remain. Today, there's only one in Antarctica and in Greenland. And what makes ice sheets important is the fact that it holds fresh water. Because it's built from snow that comes down from the sky, obviously, it's ice. It is fresh water. It's fresh water that's condensed into ice form, and it plays a big part in regulating our planet's climate. It helps regulate the climate, you could say, by keeping the cold in the cold. So, because it is an ice sheet, when the sun reflects that ice sheet, which is completely white, there is less heat that is being transmitted from the sun to the earth, to the surface of the water, which reduces and maintains that normal ocean temperature needed. These ice sheets also keep the poles cold like it is supposed to. Now, on the other hand, when these ice sheets melt, first of all, you are changing the ocean and air currents because the ice melts and it is cold, dense water. As that goes into the ocean, it could distribute heat around the planet because when the water that is melting from the ice sheets get pushed out, the water rises sea levels and therefore changes the ocean circulation. Okay, that kind of concludes my little spiel on glaciers and ice sheets. I hope you learned something new about that. And if you ever wondered what the difference is, or if you ever thought about ice sheets or glaciers, or you don't know what they are, there you go. I hope you learned something new. I hope I enlightened your brain today. But before we end off, I thought we could talk a little bit more about the animals that live near glaciers and ice sheets. I got you, didn't I? You probably were thinking that, oh, no animals really live by the glaciers or by the ice sheets. It is just polar bears, penguins, or seals, or those like animals that you see on documentaries or TV shows. But let's be a little more microscopic here. Let's talk about things that the TV shows don't show you. So I have two for you. Let's start with the surface floor. The surface floor of glaciers, where the cold water is near ice sheets and glaciers, is the Antarctic sea spider. Now, it is not actually a spider, but it does look like one. So, if you are watching, look at that picture. It has long, spider like legs that stretch out. It looks like a monster, kind of like Slender Man, if you ask me, but they glide through the sea floor. What is interesting about them is that they don't have any gills or lungs. They don't have red blood cells either. So usually fish and sharks or different animals that are not invertebrates, they have red blood cells. They have gills, they have lungs, and they do gas exchange through their lungs and gills, and they have normal blood. In the case of the Arctic sea spider, their blood is entirely clear. They absorb their oxygen instead. You know where they absorb it from? They absorb it from their legs. So that spider-like legs, that's the skin area where they absorb the oxygen. It's pretty cool, isn't it? The ice cold area where the glaciers are and where this Antarctic sea spider lives, there's a lot of oxygen there. It is highly packed. The Antarctic spider is happy. It can absorb all the oxygen it wants, and it can grow pretty big because, as you might know, oxygen promotes growth. It helps cellular systems grow, and so with that large amount of oxygen that it can absorb, it can grow pretty big. Yeah, they're just kind of slow and steady and just floating and crawling. Let's move on to the second one. We are going up to the glacier surface. This is another tiny one. It's called the glacier seawort. So these creatures are so small, they're as small as like nudibranchs. If you know, the nudibranchs are in tide pools and you kind of need a microscope to see it. These glacier ice worms are just like that. Instead, they live in the ice cold. So they live inside the ice. So they are just like parasites that might live in your intestines and might live in your stomach. Um, they live in the ice. So they burrow. They burrow deep in the glacier to stay cool. They like the cool weather. They don't want any sun. They don't want anything to do with heat. At night, they kind of crawl out and they find food. They feed on algae and tiny microbes that are located in the surface water in the top area of the ocean. If they encounter any room temperature, as you might say, they die. Okay, they disintegrate. Their entire system, their body, like they have to live in freezing conditions. Yep. As eerie as that sounds, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna end this on a eerie note, but also intriguing. And I'm gonna leave you wanting more. And I will find something else entertaining to talk about the next time. It was awesome being able to do this, and I hope you learned something new. I hope you had fun. Hope you laughed at my Christmas joke because it was a good one. I know if you laughed. That's it. Thank you all for listening. You are all wonderful people. I hope you have a good night, good afternoon, good day, good morning, and look up in the sky, because there you might see a plane, you might see a bird, some clouds. Sunrise, the sunset, the sky is pretty limitless, and it's pretty, if you ask me, as cliche as that sounds. But that's it for me. Love you guys. Bye.